What's going on, guys? Jonah with Twisty DIY. Today I wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of the exposure triangle, which consists of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. These three things are really crucial when it comes to properly exposing your image. And I wanted to make this video because I've gotten a handful of questions as I've delved into photography from some of my friends on how to properly expose an image whenever you're doing photography. So I'm not gonna waste any more time. First, I'm gonna give you guys some basic descriptions and how each one of these three components work in the camera and what they do to your image. Then I'm gonna explain how you use them to benefit your photography. Before we get into it, I'm gonna show you guys this picture on the screen here. This picture really helped me out whenever I started learning photography, mainly because it's a really easy way to understand and visually get an idea as to what these three components do for you. So first of all, we're gonna talk about ISO. There's two main things that ISO is gonna do for you. First, it's going to adjust the brightness of your image. And second, it's also going to add grain the higher you go. So most of the time, you're gonna see ISO starting around 100 and then going all the way up to around 25,000, depending on your camera. You'll hear a lot of people say just to keep it closer to 100 as you can. That way your images aren't too grainy whenever taking pictures. Now, depending on your camera, if you have a nice one or let's say a starter one, there's gonna be a ceiling where you can really comfortably push your ISO to. Some cheaper cameras aren't gonna allow you to get that nice of an image whenever you bump your ISO up too high. So rule of thumb is to try and keep it as low as possible. Now, second, we're gonna talk about aperture. Aperture is gonna adjust how blurred and in focus your background is. You're gonna see a lot of product photographers and portrait photographers using these low aperture numbers, such as f1.8, 1.4, to try and get that nice blurred background and really focus on the image and subject at hand. Whereas on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have landscape photographers, and those guys, we're gonna use more of the higher end of it, like around f22, just so you can get everything in focus in your image. One thing to note about aperture though is that as you increase that number, going all the way up to around 22 and upwards, your image is gonna become a lot darker because it can't open this lens wide enough to let in enough light. The higher number you go, the more in focus everything gets, the much darker your image gets. Now, shutter speed is going to determine how fast this shutter clicks when taking a picture. Shutter speed is really important depending on what you're shooting as well. So for instance, if you're shooting more standstill items, and you don't really need to have that fast of a shutter speed. Whereas if you're shooting animals or let's say basketball games or something like that, where you need to capture a split second, you're gonna need to have a really high shutter speed, like around 1/4000 or something. And how shutter speed affects the brightness of your image and exposure of it, if you think about it, the shutter, if you're only exposing the shutter to light for 1/4000 of a second, that's not much light that's gonna be entering into the camera. Whereas if you have your shutter open for let's say 30 seconds, that is a long time where light can enter into the camera lens. Additionally, letting light in, like I said before, it's going to capture a more still image and more frozen image whenever shooting with a high shutter speed. So which one should you use for your photography? It all comes down to what you actually shoot and what you want to get out of your image. For me, I shoot cars. So essentially, since I don't have anything moving in my background, I don't have to shoot with a high shutter speed. Really, that's like the first resort that I use whenever editing the exposure of my image. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this little video on me kind of describing how the exposure triangle works and how they work together. If you do have any questions, just let me know. By no means am I an expert at this at all, but I just wanted to give you guys some of my takes on it and hopefully give you guys some information that helped me whenever I first started out. I'm probably gonna be making a little series out of this on kind of beginner advice to more advanced, so you learn along the way as you progress as a photographer. Again, if you like the video, just leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.